So Google Ads versus Google Local Service Ads, which is the right choice for your business? We're going to get into all that and more in today's video. If you're new here, my name is Chris. I cover all things Google Ads and local lead generation. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. But let's just get into the info here. We'll go over Google Ads, local service ads, and which you might want to pick for your business. So we're going to break things down into a couple of sections here today. So I'm going to go over the pros and cons and all that kind of stuff. But first, what I wanted to do is actually show you what local service ads and Google Ads are for those that just might not be fully familiar with what you're looking at. So I'm going to hop over to just a regular Google search right over here. And up here at the top, you're going to see your local service ads. So whether you're on mobile or you're on a desktop, up here at the top of the page, these are your local service ads. You can open up this list and then see all of the other options in your market. So local service ads by default, at least at this point in time, are at the top of the Google search results. And then right underneath that, you see this sponsored result right here. These are Google Ads. And everything beyond that, you have your Google business listings down here and then your organic search results. So those are LSAs and then Google Ads. Now let's jump back and then go over pros and cons for each of them. So when it comes to Google LSAs or local service ads, there's a couple of primary things with them that really kind of make them stand out. So the pros of LSAs is that it is a pay per lead platform with no upfront fee. So it can be a great platform if you're just starting out, or if you're just kind of looking to expand your lead generation to other kind of avenues from Google. Google LSAs are a great option because of the pay per lead option. You don't have to pay like an ongoing fee. You only pay Google when you get a phone call or a message lead. And one thing I probably should have put on this list that I forgot and I just remembered it is not only is it pay per lead, if you get a lead that is irrelevant, like totally irrelevant, you can essentially, well, you can't really dispute it necessarily anymore, but you can grade it. And then Google can credit that lead. If it's an unqualified lead, you can get a credit that'll go towards next month. So you kind of get reimbursed, I guess you could say, on that lead. On top of that, it's less management. It's easier to run. They're much easier to set up. You don't need to know a lot of, optimization tactics like you do with Google Ads. That's a great thing about LSAs is they're very simple. Also, it depends on the market. Leads can be cheaper compared to Google Ads. So depends on the market, depends on the industry, but typically what I see is LSAs tend to be a little bit cheaper than Google Ads. And also you are getting the same high quality leads from Google. So Google Ads and LSAs, there's not really much of a difference in the lead quality itself. You're still getting leads from Google, so they're both going to be high quality platforms when it comes to the lead quality. Now, some of the cons with LSAs, it's not available in every market and every industry. There is going to be an approval process, so you essentially need to apply with Google, submit some documentation. They need to really verify that you are a legit business, and it's going to get connected to your Google business listing to get everything set up. And one of the other cons talking about the Google business listing is that typically what has been happening, at least recently with Google LSAs, is the bigger players in your market are most likely going to kind of dominate. So if we go back to that Google search, you're going to see the people up top are typically the people with more reviews. So 600, almost 200, 266. This one's got 281, but it's a little bit lower. Usually, if you are not as established in your local market, getting your Google LSAs to really, stand out and get a lot of leads can be tough if you're just starting out. So that's one thing to keep in mind with LSAs. And then the other thing with LSAs is you usually don't have as much control compared to Google Ads. You kind of get what you get. And sometimes I've seen accounts where Google has sort of decided to just send you fewer leads for whatever reason. They're just not very transparent with it. They can kind of throttle you whether you're not picking up the phone enough, not scoring the leads on the back end. That's a whole other conversation that's outside of this kind of pros and cons, which should you choose conversation, but you just don't have as much control. Like, you're going to get what you get. You can't dial it up or dial it down. You just sort of don't have as much control compared to something like Google Ads. So before we move on to Google Ads, I just wanted to show you the back end of a Google LSA account, just to kind of show you what you might see on the back end. So it's all very simple, really. Google is essentially giving you a CRM that you can use. So a lead comes in, you get charged, or it gets reviewed and then potentially charged or credited or whatever the situation might be. Gets stored in this CRM here, whether it's a phone call or a message. And then you can click into lead information, see the recording, log information, mark it as booked, dispute it, grade it, all that kind of stuff. And it's very simple, very straightforward, but it all gets saved like this. So you can see a lot of the lead information here. You got messages, phone calls, and those are, at least as of right now, the only two options you have are messages and phone calls. But it's very simple, very straightforward. There's not a ton to really go into on the LSA side of things, other than it is a great platform if you are just looking for something simple to add into your marketing, your lead gen. But that is local service ads. Let's move on to Google Ads and talk about those a little bit. All right, so moving on to Google Ads. Now, compared to LSAs, obviously Google Ads are also in Google search, so you're still getting the same high quality leads. Some of the pros with it is you are going to have more control compared to LSAs. Now, Google Ads will be more complicated. There's a lot more that goes into Google Ads, but with Google Ads, you are not really at the whims of Google in a lot of ways, whereas LSAs, depending on how many reviews you have on your Google business listing, how established you are, the images and pictures you have up to the listing, all that kind of stuff influences, even beyond that, are you picking up your phone? Are you responding to leads quick enough? All that kind of stuff influences how many leads you're going to get from your LSAs, whereas Google Ads, it is a pay-per-click platform. So that means as soon as day one, you can start getting clicks on your ad. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but you have a lot more control compared to LSAs. And really, as long as there's traffic, you can run a campaign. So you can technically run a campaign for anything. You can set up a campaign for anything, but if there's no traffic, nobody's going to click on your ads. The thing with local service ads is it's not available in every single local market, and it's not available in every industry. So those are some things you're going to have to verify before actually running LSAs, but that's one of the benefits of Google Ads is it is not limited to markets and industries. And like I mentioned before, it's a lot easier to just get up and running if you are in a larger market. Sometimes with LSAs, you could be battling with, getting them set up and not getting any leads. And it could just be like you're not established enough, your Google business listing isn't established enough, you don't have enough reviews, and that can hold some people back. Whereas Google Ads, you can just kind of get up and running. Now, some of the cons, like I mentioned, it is a pay-per-click platform. So whether you're getting leads or not, you are going to be paying every time somebody clicks on your ads. And this can lead to a situation where it can be very expensive if you do not know what you're doing. And if you're just winging it, transparently, it can be a massive, massive waste of money. And I've seen this happen a lot. So I don't recommend winging it. And also in terms of like managing it long term, it can be much more complicated. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of optimization. There's a lot of tweaking on the back end and diagnosing issues and troubleshooting and all that. It can be more complicated, whereas LSAs, you just kind of plug in some information, tell Google what you want. It'll send you some leads. And then on the back end, you have to essentially treat it like a CRM where you just kind of log some information. It's much more simple in that regard. And then the other con with Google Ads, while the leads are still high quality, the lead cost does tend to be more expensive. This isn't a, for sure rule in every single market. It can fluctuate, it can vary, but from what I have seen, Google Ads leads do tend to be more expensive than local service ads leads, but you have more control and you're still getting the same high quality lead from those campaigns. And really quickly, just like the LSAs, I want to show you what you see on the back end of a Google Ads campaign. Probably a lot of stuff here if you're not familiar with it. Really the things that matter is you're going to get clicks. So you're going to see clicks right here. You're going to get charged a cost per click. So it's really dependent upon your industry, your market. If you are in a very, very competitive industry, you're in roofing or something like that, your cost per click is going to be higher compared to if you were in auto detailing or something like that. So you're going to get charged per click. And then the whole game with Google Ads is you have to take those people, send them to a page or a website where they will then either submit a form or call your phone, and then you log them as a lead in Google Ads. This is obviously way beyond the scope of this video, but there's a lot more that goes into Google Ads. But the great thing about this is you have a lot more flexibility, a lot more customizability. You can actually write ads and put in ad copy and offers and all that kind of stuff, whereas local service ads, you don't have the option to do that. So this is kind of, think of this as the fully custom solution, whereas local service ads are very much the automated, kind of put in some information and then get what you get kind of a thing. And then you can see right here, you get your cost per lead. You can essentially see how many leads you're getting, how many clicks you're converting into leads, your cost per lead, all of that, as long as it's set up properly. So that's the back end of Google Ads campaign. And like I said, the biggest difference between the two is you are paying for clicks on Google Ads, whereas local service ads, you are paying per lead. And to round things out, we'll talk about what I recommend. And one question I get a lot is, which one should I do? Can I run both at the same time? And typically, what I recommend to people is, if you have the budget, if you have the bandwidth, if you can handle additional leads, etc., whatever the case may be, if it makes sense, I would recommend doing both. You don't have to separate both the platforms. They can both play well with each other, because like I showed you over in the search results, the local service ads are up top. Some people will go there. You have your sponsored Google Ads results beneath that. Some people will go there. So they don't interfere with each other. It's a separate platform. And in my case, I would prefer to run both at the same time, because the local service ads really just gives you an additional way to just get more leads in, especially from, working with a client sort of perspective. Any way to get more leads, in my mind, is better. So local service ads are great for that, because you can get more leads in. And because the leads typically tend to be a little bit, less expensive, you can help to offset the cost per lead you're going to get from Google Ads. But like I mentioned before, when it comes to Google Ads, like LSAs, you can kind of set some stuff up and be pretty much fine as long as you're managing it and you're on top of it. I do not recommend just winging it on Google Ads though. I'm obviously biased because I run these kind of campaigns on a daily basis, but the amount of times I've seen people really just lighting money on fire transparently to avoid paying somebody that knows what they're doing, that can do it right, is it'll make your head spin. So, in a quest to save $1,000, like I have written right here, in a quest to save $1,000, you just burn $10,000 in ad spend. So it's one of those things where you just want to think about it from that perspective. Is Google Ads can be a money sink really quick if you do not know what you're doing. Doesn't mean you can't learn it. Doesn't mean you can't, get good at it. Like obviously I started from not knowing what I'm doing, and now I know what I'm doing. So anybody can learn it. It's just that you have to dedicate the time and money to actually learning it. And it's not something that I just kind of recommend just winging it. So few scenarios here. If you don't have the budget to pay somebody, you don't have a big budget, I would recommend look towards Google LSAs first, because really the worst case scenario with LSAs is you just don't get leads. So you don't have to, front, $4,000 or $5,000 in ad spend for Google Ads for LSAs. You just sort of put in some information, turn it on, and then if you get a lead, you get charged. If you get no leads, you don't get charged. So that's the first thing I would think about with LSAs. If you just don't have the budget to pay somebody, you don't have the budget for Google Ads, start there. Now, another scenario is if your Google business profile is not very established yet. Like there's a lot of people in your market, in your industry, that have, hundreds, if not thousands of reviews on their Google business listing. You can try LSAs first, but there's a pretty good chance, like if you, let's say you have 10 reviews on your Google business listing, you've been in business for a year, but there's, 3 or 4 people in your market that have 500 plus, 700 plus reviews on their listing, and they have been in business for 10 plus years. Google's most likely going to show them at the top of the local service ads results, and it's going to be tough to really crack that. So you might want to look more towards Google Ads, but realistically, what I'd recommend in those scenarios is, and I say this to a lot of people, if you do not have a very established Google business listing, a very established website, or just online presence in general, I would take your budget and I would put it there before I spend a bunch of money on Google Ads, because having that, more improved online presence, having more reviews, not only is that an asset for years to come, like ranking a Google business listing, ranking a website, as long as you're doing it right and you're not messing something up, that can last for years and years and years. So that's a long-term investment that I recommend people do first before you start dumping money in Google Ads. But if you're in that situation, I'd probably look more towards Google Ads. But generally, I'd recommend just investing in the website first. And the last one is if you're established in your market, you're competitive on reviews, you're competitive in the Google Maps listings, and you have the budget to, span both platforms, then I would definitely recommend looking at both platforms, or maybe starting with Google Ads first. It's really dependent upon what you want, what your comfort level is. But I would definitely recommend doing both platforms at the same time if you are in that situation where you're established and you have the budget. So that's pretty much it. Kind of a longer rambling video, but yeah, just wanted to go over differences between Google Ads and LSAs, which is better. And the reality is neither one is better than the other. It just depends upon your situation, what your budget is, how established your business is, and what really makes sense where you are right now. So that's it for this video. If you want to see more stuff like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, And if you are somebody that wants to DIY all this kind of stuff yourself, link in the description, there's going to be a link over to a Google Ads course. There's also a ton of other videos on this channel going over, Google Ads, local lead generation, all that kind of stuff. Also, if you are the owner of a local business and you want somebody to build out your Google Ads campaign, take care of your LSAs, all that kind of stuff, there's also a link in the description for a free consultation. You can fill that out. I can review it, check it out, see if I can help you out. And if I can, I'll let you know. But in the meantime, I hope you got a little bit of value out of this video. And if you did, a like and subscribe is always appreciated. And I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks.